All right. So with that, just a quick overview of the agenda. Before we jump into sort of the TrustArc and Privya solutions and answers, I wanted to talk a little bit about why do data inventories matter in general? Why are they important? This topic comes up a lot. I think it's one of the most common issues practitioners face, but the question of why isn't always clear. So just figured it'd be useful for the viewers here to be able to listen and hear my perspective there. All right, so why do they matter? Critically, they streamline privacy compliance obligations, right? Knowing where your data means that when somebody says delete my data, export my data, building a retention period, et cetera, you really need to know what you have to be able to do those things. It's really hard to remove somebody's information if you don't know what database system, et cetera, you're going into. So data inventories are one way where you can actually take stake of where things are. And look, it's really not that different than at home. You need to know which drawer your socks are in, or you won't be able to get your socks. So same thing here. In addition, many people are familiar with ROPAs. If you're not, that's a record of processing activity. That was introduced under Article 30 of GDPR. But there are certainly other laws that have started to comment and opine on the need for inventories and taking stake of what data you have directly, such as GDPR, California law, other laws in places like Brazil, Thailand, Vietnam. But ultimately, because of some of the commonalities of privacy laws, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, many privacy laws, the genesis of them is actually from the OECD guidelines, which are multiple decades old and far older than GDPR, require things, like I said, like deletion, export, et cetera. And to really do those things properly, you need them. So while it's directly called out in a number of laws that I mentioned here, there are lots of other laws where it's basically inferred that you need to know where your data is to fulfill those types of obligations. Similarly, risk management. Inventories help assess what is being processed for your organization, which helps you understand what actually is at play here. If you are a banking institution, the type of information you hold is probably significantly higher risk than, if you are a widget provider, perhaps, and all you're selling is widgets and the only information you maintain is name, billing address, et cetera. So really understanding what you have and what kind of requirements you need around that data is critical, not just for those privacy obligations that I mentioned earlier, but also for things like InfoSec planning, right? Do you need state-of-the-art encryption if all you're holding is, somebody's country of origin? Something to think about as an example. And so having these inventories will let you really think through what you need from InfoSec perspective with the InfoSec teams, of course, right? That's never done in a vacuum. But inventories are not just a privacy thing, I think is really the critical component here. They're really about understanding what kind of data you have for a variety of purposes. Sort of as an extension of this InfoSec point, strategic and budget planning. Depending on how much information you have, your privacy needs, your security needs, your DevOps, et cetera, needs might be totally different. And then last but not least, customer obligations, sales support. More and more clients of TrustArc, and I suspect Privya, but even my colleagues are talking about how RFPs have just become the norm. It's funny, I was actually at a carnival with my daughter this weekend, and somebody came up from another software company that's in a totally different space and was like, hey, we've been getting a lot of RFPs about AI. So this is just happening a lot. We're all kind of living in a world where vendor due diligence, second party, third party, fourth party diligence is becoming the norm. Same thing, InfoSec and privacy questionnaires, annual assessments of your vendors. These things all really require you to kind of know what you have, how you secure it, et cetera. And then, critically, online disclosures need to happen, right? For companies that use sub-processors, i.e. a common example is SaaS companies, right? Oftentimes software as a service companies might be using an ecosystem of providers such as cloud hosting providers, third parties that might help with things like marketing support, sales support, et cetera. You have obligations often to either notify your clients if you want to use a new one and get their consent under, for example, GDPR, or going through something called general authorization under Article 28 of GDPR. If you're going through general authorization, you're typically obligated to publicly disclose who you're using, what you're using them for, and then provide at least a fixed amount of notice period in advance. Many companies use 30 days. So taking inventory of your systems is really critical to be able to do those things and do them well. So problem statement. Creating comprehensive inventories can be hard, right? It's hard and it's important for a lot of reasons, as I said. Because really, you shouldn't just be having a privacy team taking one inventory and a security team taking another, but that sometimes happens. And legacy methods are really no longer viable. Thinking back to GDPR prep in a prior life, 2016, 2017, we started out in Excel files. Many of us did, actually. And those types of legacy methods don't necessarily work in the complex world that we live in, where people have ecosystems of vendors and many different use cases. And can't go without saying that, the Gartner stat has continued to kind of percolate and be a critical data point, which is that by the end of this year, Gartner predicted that 75% of the world would be covered by modern privacy laws. That means that taking stake of what data you have in the complexity of the ecosystem means that it's not like it used to be, right? You can't just do the old manual data inventory creation the same way. Or you can, but it significantly prolongs the process. It often is static, which is a problem, meaning it doesn't change, obviously, because it's a file. These methods often rely on a lot of what I call chasing, right? You're chasing engineering, you're chasing product, you're chasing procurement. It's highly manual. You have to regularly update it. Some of this doesn't really work in the modern world for modern organizations, particularly as you go on your maturity journey. Lack of automation impedes flow, and streamlining is really important. So a couple of notes on that. One of the reasons why I joined TrustArc was because I was a TrustArc client, and our CEO really wanted somebody to be a voice of the customer from within. And I had a lot of experience in this specific area. Like I said, in 2016, I was using Excel files. By the way, I was very happy with it in 2016. It seemed to check the box. It seemed to build a ROPA. I wasn't thinking about the term data inventory, but it was checking the GDPR Article 30 box, right? It was meeting the criteria. A friend of mine, our former CISO at the time, said, "Hey, we need to do something better." And so at the time, I went to a competitor of TrustArc because they were getting a little buzz. I tried them out. I found the experience to be really time-consuming. The on-ramping time was really challenging. And by the way, the engineering and product teams were really unhappy with the user experience from their end as contributors. That led me to wonder, what do we need? What kind of user testing do I need to do better? That led me to TrustArc's tool, which had a better flow. It was more user-friendly for engineering and product teams who had to provide inputs, etc. But over time, even using that tool, I started to wonder, how do we make this more automated? How do we make this faster? Because, as you notice, right, as you're updating your program, if there's a security investigation, etc., you really need to know where all the data is across a cross-section of areas. And unfortunately, for the most part, many companies are pulling from their inventory solution, pulling from a DevOps solution, pulling from a security solution, and trying to piece it all together. And Kristen and I have been thinking long and hard about what can we do to simplify that experience for folks, because some of that doesn't really work when you're in a rush, when you have a big organization, etc. I also spoke to a number of colleagues about what do you do during privacy planning, during incident response? How do you know where your data is, right? And I spoke to some folks who have been using data discovery tools, and I heard some horror stories ranging from vaporware to 1 year long implementations to eye-watering multi-six-figure fees. And that just didn't work, right? So Kristen and I thought long and hard about what can we do at TrustArc to make this better. And then we also partnered up with Privya to think about what we could do to really make this a mature, holistic solution. And by the way, 1 or 2 point solutions is actually remarkably better than what I've seen on the market, which is some folks using 3 or 4 disjointed point solutions to make this work. So with that, I'm really excited about what TrustArc and Privya have to offer. And I'd like to hand it to Kristen to talk about the TrustArc component first.
Awesome. Thank you, Val. So I'm the product manager for the Data Inventory Hub. And as Val said, it can be really cumbersome to populate a data inventory record. It's the first step in the process that our customers take in order to understand what records are being used, where their data sits, and then from downstream from there, until you get that part done, you can't leverage the rest of the system, such as creating business process records, understanding your risk, and creating the reporting that you need to provide to show your program's privacy posture. So real quick, before we jump into how we've solved for this problem, I want to do a quick overview of the Data Inventory Hub and what it is. And then we'll provide an overview of how we've partnered with Privya and the integration that we provide to automate this challenge. So the Data Inventory Hub, it's our data inventory and Ropey tool, which is used to populate your system, third-party, and organization records. You can put information about what data is being collected and processed into these records. You can analyze the risk of each of these records. You can run reports based on organization and see which part of your organization has the most risk. And then you can also generate Article 30 reporting and provide that to auditors to make sure that, that your program is in compliance. So all of this really requires a lot of work unless you pair it with automation. So as Val mentioned, originally he started off in spreadsheets. And a lot of customers over the last, I would say 5 to 10 years have transitioned from spreadsheets over to a system like the Data Inventory Hub or the Data Inventory Hub. And now we're taking it a step further with our integration and automation approach, which I'll go through on the next slide, which showcases how we can automate all of this work for you so that this isn't your full-time job and that you can focus on other areas of your privacy program without having to manually touch all of your data inventory records and business process records. So on the left side, we have a few different in-house solutions that we've created to help streamline your data inventory record creation. We've got a record exchange solution with 400 pre-created records. We have a third-party discovery solution where we scan your organization's websites. We have some AI autofill technology and an integration library with connectors. But what I'm most excited for is our new partnership with Privya. They have a really unique approach to scanning your code base and understanding what data is being processed, if AI is being used to process that data. And then downstream, we're able to automate the creation of your data inventory records, indicate if AI is being used to process that data, and flag risk and recommend assessments to remediate that risk. And it really just streamlines the entire process so that you don't have to rely on spreadsheets. You don't have to spend weeks to months in the data inventory trying to populate this information. It's really, really easy to use, and it streamlines and eliminates that manual work for you. So I'm going to pass it over now to Privya to go into more detail on our integration and all the benefits of their solution. Oh, and you know what? I touched on this a little bit, but again, some of the benefits are streamlining inventory creation, being able to auto-detect AI usage, and then automating risk and reporting as well.
And I did just want to highlight something that Kristen mentioned. The pre-populated records is huge. I think it's one of the things that I'm most excited about on the TrustArc side. There are common systems and they're commonly used in similar ways across most organizations. Us giving you a leg up by kind of pre-populating that or letting you pick from pre-built records should save a ton of time because it's ultimately not that unique if a company is using a certain CRM that we all know of or a certain cloud hosting solution. There are common ones that many companies use. And so making that easier once we detect those is a game changer, in my opinion. Awesome. All right, with that, we'll hand it over to Privya.
Hi, everyone. So over the next few slides, we're going to understand a little bit better the code-based data discovery at the beginning from a zoom out perspective and then drilling down into the details. Okay, so let's look at it from a zoom out perspective, from outside of the stratosphere. So 3 basic and simple stages for our solution. The first is simply scanning the lines of code. We are connecting in a very simple way, non-intrusive, without any agents, into the Git or to the place where the code is stored and do a scanning. The scanning is taking a few minutes up to a few hours at the worst case scenario. Nothing related to the days or to the months of manual questionnaires and all those other pieces that Val mentioned before. The second stage is that we are using the code to identify keywords, patterns, flows, PII, SPI, among other things. And the nice thing about it, and again, we're going to touch a little bit further into that over the next couple of slides, is that we're not just pulling a list of endless amounts of data points or issues, we're also providing the flow and the context of what we're finding. So the data is being scanned, is being tagged, it's being categorized, and based on that, we are actually assessing the risk.
And one thing I really like about the previous solution is that it's super flexible. So there is an on-prem and a host version of the code scanning, depending on people's kind of security needs. So I think that's sort of a great add to the feature portfolio.
Thank you. Okay, let's deep dive a little bit more into the details. The first step is, as I mentioned before, is that we're scanning the code. We can scan practically everything, legacy system, cloud-based application, third-party integration, and so forth. What does it take for the customer for us to do the scanning? Practically nothing. Again, an access to the Git, or we have even other alternatives like allowing people to send us zip files or something like that, as simple as that, and the scanning happening. Based on the scanning, we are automatically identifying and categorizing the information. What can we find in the scanning? PII, sensitive information, but not just that. Third parties, integrations, number one. Very hot topic these days, we can identify the usage or the presence of AI or ML models. Uzi will touch bases on that over the next slide. PII, I've mentioned before, we can map the connected data stores and the API interfaces. Again, all of that, you're getting that from a few minutes scan, which is completely non-intrusive. The nice thing about it is that everything is happening, and based on our own logic and internal models, we're not just extracting the data, we are classifying the data based on the context, and this is a very important component, as we all know, in the reporting, in the risk assessment that we need to provide. So we're giving you both the data and the context and the classification of the data all at once in a fairly simplified way, and again, within a few minutes. What we're getting out of that, I think that Val did a great job already stealing my bullet here, but you are saving tons of time. Again, that's the first part. The second part is that unlike the traditional models or methods, sorry, that are very static, leave aside the time that it takes to do all those questionnaires, think about it. The second that you ended the process, one day after that, you're not updated or accurate anymore because things are happening, especially in today's world where data is so dynamic and so many things are being created on a daily basis. The nice thing about the code scanning approach is that it's always updated. It's a very dynamic method to handle your data, which is completely the opposite of the static mode of the previous methods. Saving time, we've mentioned it already. Think about it again, few minutes up to few hours, and also a common truth. Instead of people giving it their own interpretation, you're getting the data, you use the source code, which is, let's look at it as the ultimate truth, and by that, you have everything in front of you. And all of this information is eventually being compared to provide you a proper proactive privacy risk management. The information is being compared or matched with all the relevant and popular regulations, and you're getting your status and the issues that you need to fix versus such regulations.
So I would like to elaborate a bit about what Asaf just described. So after we collect all the data, the next step is to understand the data flow. What is the sources of the data, where it goes, what from source to thing. So this is one of the things that we provide as part of our code scanning solution. We understand the data lineage. So you can see a few examples on the slide. For example, going from project to a data store to a third party. and vice versa. So we provide all this information in a very simple way, and this gives a lot of value in the privacy and the security program that you need to manage to your solution. So we categorize all the front end that collecting data, the data store like database, like AWS services like DynamoDB, S3 bucket, and others. And we also categorize all the things like third parties, and even using a machine learning and AI model. More than that, because we provide the data flow, users are able also to understand if there is some kind of data that is derived from different sources. So for example, some user use some kind of machine learning model based on the user behavior on the website, and based on that they build a profile. So the profile is the data that is derived from sources that were collected, but this is a new data set that is generated as part of the data flow. The next topic that I would like to elaborate is about the AI and the machine learning model. Now it's become a very hot topic, in particular because of the new solution like in generative AI, like ChatGPT and Midjourney and others. And there are many challenges related to the generative AI. So we're all familiar with the regular challenges like in machine learning and the automatic profiling regulation and GDPR, but the generative AI brought additional challenges. Just to name a few, because the generative AI is based on some kind of randomness, and it might have some kind of hallucination, you need to validate also the data that it generates, not only the data that you insert. So there are many challenges related to generative AI, and the main challenge is the fact that nowadays a developer integrates generative AI as part of other solutions, so they can work directly with ChatGPT, Claude, and others. It's very easy to do the integration. And one of the things that we provide, we are able to detect and classify any integration with generative AI or with classical machine learning model. And then we can provide all the context of the usage of this specific generative AI. For example, where the data is coming from, what is the type of the data that is shared with generative AI, what is the purpose of this specific repository. In this case, we are using our own large language model to classify the purpose of each project. So we give a lot of context and understanding, and based on that, users are now are able to do a much easier way to do the risk assessment based on the EU AI Act and the NIST AI RMF framework. So similar to the generative AI, we are also able to detect integration with third parties. By third parties, we mean like HubSpot, Mixpanel, Salesforce, and others. So we're able to classify integration of third parties, the data that is shared with third parties, the purpose of the project, the owner of the project, the owner in the engineering that is owner of the project that share the data with third party. We raise alert when we find something which might raise some kind of a risk. If there is a several integration with third parties, if there is a risk associated with the data that is shared with the third party, all of the above is done automatically and it's part of our solution. More than that, we now in work in progress. We also working on adding additional angle, which is the no code, the shadow IT of third party, and this is something that we are now working on, and together with the code will provide an holistic view of all the data and all the third parties that a customer use.
If I may use it, just to add, what we're trying to build here is something that will not just give you a pile of endless amounts of findings and issues, which we all know it's a common problem in today's world, right? Everybody are a little bit tired of getting now 15,000 different issues, false positive, false negative, and so forth. But to try to add an additional context to the data that you're getting from the scanning, like the classification that Uzi mentioned, like severity of the issues that we found, like the flow of the data, and understanding the context of the data, rather than just giving the data itself. So this is one of the main pillars of what we were building over the last couple of months. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And on top of it, we provide an option to explore and ask questions about the data that you process in your repository, that you store in your data store, or you use in the AI or in the third parties. So you get a very good and convenient way to manage and to manage and to reduce the risk of your organization. Going back to you, Bob.
All right. So when I was, before I joined TrustArc, I dreamed of a world where during incident response or privacy planning, I could go into one repository and type in, if folks have been involved in planning or incident response, oftentimes you're not necessarily thinking about holistic management, but about a certain data set or a certain category. Let's just talk about incident response for a minute. If somebody told you that they on the security team that they received an alert for system X, let's call that Microsoft Azure or something, right? I wanted to be able to type in Microsoft Azure into something and see a full view of what the potential impact could be to my former employer, right? And when I came here, I was like, I want to make sure that exists, because people really need that. Oftentimes during planning or during incident response, you need to work quickly and you need to be able to query in a number of different ways. And I think the ability to integrate TrustArc with Privya really provides that in a pretty incredible way. Like I mentioned earlier, I had researched quite a bit about what folks are doing in the data discovery space as I joined TrustArc. And to me, this is one of the most elegant and integrated solutions that I have seen. Via API and user interfaces, you can use these tools seamlessly, and you can do just that, which is you can dynamically see what kinds of data you have, and you can export it into all the different records that you might need. You can manage your vendors. It's really a tremendous opportunity, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I think one more thing, if you're interested in seeing a demo of Privya or the Data Inventory Hub, you can reach out to us and we can coordinate a time to do that. We're really excited again about this partnership. So thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.